Hi, I'm Josh Kervin. Welcome to another Death Battle prediction video. For this time, though, we'll be putting my gentle critique of Fulgore vs. Sector until the end of the video, so we'll jump right into Godzilla vs. Gamera. When I saw this one at the end of the last episode, I was kind of skeptical as to who they were going to put Godzilla against. He's surprisingly overpowered over the course of his movies, and there's very few people who could really give him a good match. So when it was someone that I didn't really know that well, I jumped right into the research to see if he can tackle the King of the Monsters. One of the main things with this fight is the eras that they're using. There were several eras of the movies, which are the Showa era, the Heisei era, the Millennium era, and the new Legendary era, which is like the new movie that just came out in North America. These eras just have various sizes, abilities, just portrayals in general are completely different between these eras. And one of the big things is the sizes that's going to come into this fight. Gamera only had showings in the Showa era and the Heisei era, but those two vary so wildly that it's definitely worth mentioning. We're going to start with him for his size and weight. In the first era, the Showa era, he was 60 meters tall and 80 tons. I actually did some math on that, and that's just a little bit more dense than air. So an average person would be able to punch through that with absolutely no effort. Luckily they did fix this, though, for the Heisei era, where he was put up to 80 meters and 10,000 tons, which is a lot more in line with what some of the other Kaiju are weighing in at. Godzilla, though, in the Showa era, he was 50 meters and 20,000 tons, so he's already starting off heavier than Gamera's ever been. Then he went up even higher in the Heisei era, 100 meters and 60,000 tons, and then he maintained that for Millennium, and in Legendary, he was put up to 108.2 meters, with them being very particular on that, and 90,000 tons, which is actually a pretty huge weight gap between the 60,000 and 90,000 for just an 8.2 meter change. So apparently he just became very dense, apparently. So now we're going to get into some of the feats, my stats. We're just going to start with strength. Godzilla has actually been shown to be very, very powerful. Most of his attacks are capable of completely leveling city blocks, skyscrapers, boats, all the usual stuff. He's also shown a lot of strength when he fights against other Kaiju. He's thrown characters like Ghidorah, who weighs 30,000 tons, and Mechagodzilla, who weighs 40,000 tons. And just in general, he's been shown to be able to throw around and suplex all the various Kaiju, no matter how much they weigh. In terms of durability, this is one of Godzilla's strong points. He's immune to any conventional weapons, such as like missiles, bullets, explosives, anything like that. He's sat in lava holding up tectonic plates before. He was at ground zero of an asteroid, and this can be decently attributed to his regen, which is apparently due to his atomic makeup that allows him to fully heal from huge fights within a couple of hours. I actually don't think this is going to come into play that much, though, because largely with these kinds of fights, they're only going to be like 6 to 10 minutes at the most, so it's not enough time for a healing factor to really do very much. His speed is one of his really weak points. He's very slow and bulky, relying more on grappling and things like that to keep his enemies in front of him, though he has shown strange agility in the Showa era, where he was able to just pull karate and kung fu moves out of nowhere. His intellect is actually kind of variable. There's been a lot of deviations of how smart he is. In most cases, he's shown to be like a thinking creature, almost like bestial instinct, but in some iterations he's on par or greater than a human, and I'm not even going to get into the King Kong vs. Godzilla thing, where the American release stated that he had a brain that was smaller than a marble, just because of how inconsistent that is with any of the other showings that we've seen. For weaknesses, though, Godzilla has had a very, very strange relationship with those. Lightning was one of his weaknesses, and he was very scared of it. Now it just heals him. Cadmium, which was kind of like his kryptonite, he's immune to it now. And then he had a second brain in his spine that was used by Super Mechagodzilla to kill him. Though this isn't really a thing anymore, and it was just used the one time, and after he was revived, things just haven't gone for it, and even when he does get hit there, it doesn't seem to do anything special. So whether or not they're going to take this into account for the fight, it's beyond me. Now for Gamera. Gamera's strength feats, at best he's like taken down a few smaller buildings, and he tore off the Legion Queen's horn. Now because it's an insect creature, that means that it's basically tearing the skeleton apart because of the exoskeleton. And this is a decent feat because the Legion Queen is a fairly large and heavy kaiju. His durability, though, is, again, one of his stronger points because he is, in fact, a large turtle. It's very tough, and there was the Rainbow Ray from Barugon that's capable of destroying a full volley of missiles in a single shot, and then Gamera just went into a shell and emerged with absolutely no damage. It has been shown to be somewhat inconsistent, though, because something named Gyron managed to break through with enough hits on a single spot. And then he has the same healing factor as Godzilla, which further makes the healing factor useless because they both have it. For his speed, he's, again, extraordinarily slow, but his flight speed is actually pretty good. He's capable of clearing cities by, like, curling into his shell and spinning like a UFO. Now for his intellect, he's about human in smarts, as he can actually has a telepathic connection with all of humanity somehow, and he especially likes the children. In terms of weaknesses, he has the cold, which is something that Godzilla really can't capitalize on. He has nothing that can really use against that. And then he also has his underbelly. For his shell, it is a lot weaker than the top of it. This wouldn't be as much of an issue if there weren't two big things here, is that Godzilla is much heavier and larger, meaning he can just pick him up and use that to just get access to the underbelly. And that's not even necessary, though, because for some strange reason Gamera is a bipedal turtle, meaning the weak underbelly is literally facing Godzilla at all times. Just doesn't make sense. Okay, so now the abilities. We've got Godzilla's classic atomic breath, which it's done all sorts of stuff. It's destroyed a mini black hole in Destroy All Monsters and Final Wars. It was capable of killing most kaiju in a single shot with accuracy to hit things in space from Earth. And then at its strongest, when it was the Spiral Ray, it made Kaiser Ghidorah explode in the upper atmosphere after it pushed him there. Like, he basically just threw Ghidorah above him and shot up, and then it was a huge explosion that was visible from Earth. He also has his nuke pulse, which is exactly what it sounds. It's just nuclear energy forcing outwards like a force bubble. He has magnetic powers that he adapted to on the spot to beat Mechagodzilla with. He can just use standard fireballs, and he can fly by shooting his atomic breath straight down. This is one of the more hilarious things that we've seen in a Godzilla movie. And he's sometimes shown cases of precog, though it's really questionable if it's just luck or not. It's never been extrapolated on, but there are several times where he's reacted to things that he could not possibly have known, or really reacted to without knowledge. So I'm not going to use it for this fight, but it's just something interesting that's there. For Gamera, he's capable of breathing fire, he can shoot plasma fireballs, he can do enhanced versions of his standard fire attacks, he has his oxygen-powered fireball plasma, which is kind of outside help, though, because he could only use that after breathing in oxygen from the flowers that the Legion Queen brought to Earth. So I'm not sure if they're going to give him that for this fight. He can do standard fire manipulation, he can absorb the energy of the Earth and shoot a beam of pure plasma. That's probably his strongest attack. It's capable of, like, leveling buildings and stuff like that. As I said before, he can tuck into a shell and fly like a UFO. And he can do his fireball ejection suicide, which is exactly what it sounds like. He basically just makes a huge explosion from himself. It's kind of like what the Terminator does, where he just decides, yep, I'm losing this fight, let's take him out with me. So now we've reached the point where we make our verdict. On the plus side for Godzilla, he is a lot bigger and heavier, which is going to be huge in a fight between kaiju, which largely amounts to grappling and lifting. He has better attacks. He's an all-around better fighter in most cases. He has a lot more feats, and he's faced much more powerful enemies. And this is one of the weird situations where the giant turtle is not the one with better durability. Godzilla has just been shown to endure a lot more. And while Gamera can fly and is much more mobile, he might even be able to absorb some of Godzilla's fire attacks. But he's still far weaker. He cannot lift or really inflict that much damage on Godzilla, and his underbelly is a very, very obvious weak spot. His shell just also doesn't seem to have the consistency to go against someone of Godzilla's level. So it seems a bit obvious at this point, but I'm going to be siding with Godzilla on this fight to come. Now for the last episode, Fulgore versus Sector, or as I like to call it, Ivy versus Orchid Part 2. There was just a lot wrong with this fight. They made it very clear from the get-go that there was a full bias for Killer Instinct and Fulgore in general right off the start. They had this huge thing with how Fulgore has more options in ranged and melee combat, but I actually counted through them, and Sector has 6 melee options and 7 ranged, and Fulgore has 3 melee options and 7 ranged. And then the ranged ones aren't even as important because this fight is largely going to be in melee because these two can teleport into melee range. They also once again used the fact that Orchid killed the demigod as some huge hinge for the fight. I said it before and I shouldn't have to say it again, but the fact that Idol was severely weakened when he was captured by Ultratech is blatantly stated in game. They don't make any attempt to hide that. It just isn't the same Idol that managed to level armies. And then they specifically say that because Sector never killed Sub-Zero and Fulgore never killed Jago, that brings them to even ground, except that Fulgore almost beat Jago, if not for Orchid's interference. That doesn't put a parallel between them. That's the main thing there, is that I honestly believe that Sub-Zero would have zero trouble with killing both Jago and Orchid at the same time. So you can't make some sort of power scaling argument when there isn't a clear established line between these two characters. They also have this thing where they made a big deal of his compressor. They say that it's about 2 tons of force, and they make a big point out of that. And then when in the fight, he just kind of doesn't care. He just holds it up, and they don't explain how. As far as I know, there is no feat that puts Fulgore up to at least 2 tons of power. They also specifically said in the end of the video that Sector may be able to avoid Fulgore's bulk, and then they go on to say how much bigger and heavier he is. So that's completely pointless, and as I said before in my last video, his bulk is actually a bad thing in this fight because they're projectile-based characters, so the more of him there is to hit, the more that is going to get hit. I didn't really mention the bias before in my last video because I shouldn't have to. I'm making these prediction videos to say who should win the fight. And when these videos come out that just show bias and things like that, it just does a bad job, and it makes people seem a lot less credible. So I shouldn't have to mention the bias, even though I certainly was thinking that the Killer Instinct bias was going to come into this again. That said, though, we'll see how the next one goes. The fight, though, actually. The fight was extraordinarily short. It wasn't very good in comparison, because it was a little bit over a minute long, not even, and most of it was just focused on Fulgore winning it. Any time that Sector would start to do something, he'd either have his combo breaker, or he'd just break the compressor that was going to kill him. And then, so there never really was a moment where Fulgore would have really lost, because they just had him win at every opportunity. So it wasn't a very interesting fight, fitting for a fight that I don't have any interest in the characters for. The next one, though, it's going to be a lot more interesting, and it'll be in 3D. So I'm excited to see that. I will see everybody next time.